Welcome to Bookish Minds, Season 7, Episode 8, where we delve into Ben Horowitz's The Hard Thing About Hard Things, to uncover why, in the unpredictable world of entrepreneurship, sometimes the sky turns purple and you just have to deal with it. This deep dive is all about pulling back the curtain on the brutal realities and unique challenges of running a startup. We're going to extract the raw, unvarnished insights into leadership decisions and navigating chaos, pulling apart Horowitz's wisdom on everything from, surprising corporate betrayals to the delicate art of managing people and making monumental company choices.
Right. And our mission today is really to distill the most crucial lessons for you, the learner. We want to help you understand not just what happened in these high-stakes scenarios, but why it profoundly matters for anyone facing tough decisions in a fast-changing world. Get ready for some genuine aha moments that might just change how you think about leadership and resilience.
Okay, let's unpack this with a foundational concept from Horowitz. The first rule of entrepreneurship: there are no rules. And there's probably no better way to illustrate this than with the utterly wild story of Opsware's sale. So imagine the scene. They're deep in acquisition talks. HP puts in a bid. BMC counters, then HP counters again. The team, including Horowitz, is strategizing, hoping the winning bid will hit like $15 per share or higher. Everyone's buzzing, things are looking up.
Yeah, big time. But then, almost out of nowhere, disaster strikes. And not from a competitor, no. From Opsware's own auditor, Ernst & Young. See, during DMC's due diligence, they flagged an issue. Opsware had accounted for 3 deals differently than BMC typically would. It all centered around something called the CA clause, which is, well, a common industry provision. It's designed to prevent software vendors from charging for upgrades that customers thought were free. Now, Opsware and their own E&Y partner had interpreted this one way, allowing for upfront revenue recognition based on the contract's intent. But BMC's E&Y partner saw it differently. And this led to a critical accounting dispute rooted in ambiguity that suddenly threatened the entire, $1.6 billion deal?
Okay, so just so I understand this correctly, the CA clause had these 2 possible interpretations.
That's right.
One meant you recognized all revenue up front. The other meant it was spread out over time, ratably. And this is key. The cash payments from the customers were exactly the same either way.
Exactly. It was purely an accounting nuance, a difference in interpretation.
But Opsware's own E&Y partner, Dave Price, he audited these deals, and he'd advised them to recognize the revenue up front.
He had, understanding the contract's original intent. But BMC's E&Y partner, seeing things differently, they escalated this, could get straight to Ernst & Young's national office.
And this is where it gets absolutely wild. E&Y's national audit partner calls Horowitz and basically says, I disagree with my own partner's audit. And then demands Opsware restate revenue guidance within 48 hours.
Unbelievable.
Horowitz is just, you can imagine, floored. Restating revenue would crater their stock price. It would torpedo the entire sale. He points out, quite reasonably, that this accounting dispute had 0 material impact on cash flows, and their original treatment was based on E&Y's own judgment in the first place. I mean, his thought process must have just been, what the hell is going on?
It really was an unbelievable moment. Horowitz tried to reason with them. He suggested, look, let's just call the 3 customers, confirm the intent of the contracts. If the customers backed up Opsware's original understanding, they could leave it. But E&Y flatly refused. They insisted Opsware get all 3 large banks to amend their contracts with new E&Y-approved language.
Amend contracts.
Global banks.
In the middle of a multi-billion-dollar acquisition.
In 48 hours, Horowitz tried to explain how impossible that was.
I bet.
And E&Y's response was just, stone cold, we don't care. That's what you have to do. Their own partner, Dave Price, apparently looked absolutely devastated. E&Y's national office was basically prioritizing the letter of a very specific accounting interpretation over, any business or practical reality.
Wow. The pressure on the CFO, Dave Conti. And he was a former E&Y veteran himself, wasn't he?
He was. The irony. 8 years building Opsware right on the brink of this massive sale, and it's their own accounting firm about to derail everything.
So they had no choice. They had to disclose this discrepancy to HP and BMC immediately, and neither buyer thought they could possibly get 3 huge banks to amend contracts in less than 24 hours.
Who would?
But Dave, Horowitz, their sales leader Mark Cranny, and general counsel Jordan Breslow, they went to war. Worked through the night, pulling every string, calling every board member, every sales rep, trying to reach the right people at these banks. Dave Conti was reportedly on the verge of a heart attack.
I can believe it.
And somehow, miraculously, by 11 a.m. the next morning, they had all 3 contracts amended. They didn't have to restate revenue. It's just An incredible testament to sheer will.
It really is a true miracle. But the fallout was still significant. Unsurprisingly, the whole ordeal spooked BMC. They pulled their bid.
Right.
And HP, while they didn't walk away, they lowered their offer, dropped it to $13.75 per share, citing the, quote, taint on the deal.
So that night, the board meets, and they unanimously advise Horowitz, look, take the $13.75 offer. It's still a huge win. But he digs in his heels, just refuses, says, nope, not taking a nickel less than the original $14.25.
Gutsy.
Yeah. His argument was HP offered $14.25 because Opsware was the premium company, the gold standard. Accepting a discount would undermine that whole premise, maybe even unravel the deal entirely. The board, you can imagine, uneasily accepted his position. A bit nervous, I guess.
Very nervous. And after a tense 2-hour pause where Dave Conte's face apparently remained pale, HP caved. They accepted the $14.25 offer. So they had a deal. Though, as Horowitz points out, it was still about $100 million less than it probably would have been if their so-called partner hadn't created the whole mess.
His lasting sentiment.
I still hate Ernst & Young. Pretty clear.
Yeah, can't blame him. But what's truly fascinating here, beyond the incredible drama, is how Horowitz uses this story. It drives home his core concept. Just when you think you can count on things in business. Yeah, you find out the sky is purple. He teaches us that real leadership isn't about wishing reality was different. It's about adapting your strategy fast when unexpected crises hit, especially when they come from supposedly trusted partners.
Right.
The real hard thing isn't just what happens, it's your willingness to pivot, your whole strategy. Acknowledge things are profoundly different, maybe even look like Barney for a while, as he puts it. You can't argue it's blue, you just deal with the new reality.
And this idea, navigating the unexpected, it isn't just about external forces like auditors suddenly changing their minds. It also applies to the internal challenges of leadership, which brings us to what Horowitz calls the accountability versus creativity paradox. And here's the dilemma he poses. How do you reward a creative engineer who fixed a critical architectural weakness, something that would have crippled your product later, but in doing so, slipped the schedule by 9 months instead of the projected 3?
Oof. Yeah, that's a tightrope walk, isn't it? Horowitz points out 2 major pitfalls here. On one hand, if you become a prosecuting attorney, really nail that engineer for missing her commitment, you'll almost certainly discourage her and everyone else from taking important risks later. You end up with people just covering their backsides.
Yeah, CYA culture. Not good.
But on the other hand, if you don't hold her accountable at all for that commitment, then the people who do bust their butts to meet deadlines, they start to feel like chumps. Like, why did I stay up all night if someone who missed by 6 months gets rewarded?
It's a real balancing act, and Horowitz's fundamental assumption here is crucial. You must assume your employees are generally creative, intelligent, and motivated, unless they prove otherwise. If you assume the opposite, forget about innovation. But even with that positive assumption, you still have to hold people accountable. Otherwise, you get that resentment factor among your diligent folks.
So how do you balance that? Horowitz breaks down accountability across 3 dimensions. First, pretty straightforward. Accountability for effort. To be a world-class company, you need world-class effort. If someone isn't giving it, you deal with that immediately.
Yeah.
Non-negotiable.
Makes sense. Then there's accountability for promises. In well-run places, you often hear, make a commitment, keep a commitment. And this is critical for execution, but it gets trickier as the difficulty increases. Promising to finish, say, marketing collateral is very different from promising to hit an engineering schedule for a really hard computer science problem.
Yeah.
You absolutely hold people accountable for the first one, but the second one is more complicated, and it kind of bleeds into results.
Which brings us to the third and most nuanced one. Accountability for results. So if someone fails to deliver the results she promised, like our engineer, do you hold her accountable? Should you?
And the answer, Horowitz says, is classic consultant speak. It depends.
Of course.
It depends on 3 things. First, seniority. More experienced people should be better at forecasting than junior folks. An error from a junior might be a teaching moment. From a senior, it's maybe more serious. Second, degree of difficulty. Some things are just plain hard, like hitting sales numbers with a weak product in a recession or building a super complex platform. The harder it is to predict accurately.
Makes sense.
And finally, amount of stupid risk. You don't want to punish good, calculated risks that just didn't pan out, but not all risks are smart. Was it a good bet that failed, or was it just obviously foolish from the start?
Right. differentiating between calculated risks and just plain dumb moves.
Exactly. So applying this back to our engineer, you'd look at her seniority. Is she a chief architect? She needs to get better at scoping. More junior. Teacher. How hard was the problem? Was scaling that product a near miracle? If so, thank her, don't scold her. If it was trivial and just took way too long, well, that's different.
And was the risk itself the right strategic move?
Precisely. If the product really would have hit a scaling wall, then whether it took 3 months or 9, fixing it was the right call strategically.
So the big takeaway here is that, especially in tech, you rarely know everything up front. And that difference between being just, mediocre and achieving something truly magical often lies in letting people take those creative risks. Understanding accountability is vital, yes, but it's not the only thing. It's about finding that delicate balance. Okay, beyond these tough leadership paradoxes, Horowitz also shares some really unconventional, almost surprising solutions, like what he calls the Freaky Friday management technique.
Whoa, yeah, this one's great. So he describes this intractable problem he faced. 2 really excellent teams in the company, customer support and sales engineering, were just constantly at war. The sales engineers complained bitterly that support didn't respond fast enough, wouldn't fix things, basically hindered sales.
Okay.
Meanwhile, customer support claimed the sales engineers submitted junk bug reports, didn't listen to workarounds, and were just alarmists treating every minor issue like a 5-alarm fire. And it wasn't just professional disagreement, they genuinely disliked each other, even though the people and managers on both teams were superb. He was stumped.
And then, the story goes, inspiration strikes from a movie.
Right. He happened to watch the classic Freaky Friday, the one where the mom and daughter switch bodies and, by walking in each other's shoes, gain empathy and understanding.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Exactly. Inspired by the movie, Horowitz did something bold and permanent. He told the head of sales engineering and the head of customer support they were switching jobs permanently. He literally told them, like in the movie, you keep your mind, but you get a new body, professionally speaking.
Their reaction.
Predictably, screams of horror.
You can only imagine. But did it work?
Miraculously, yes. Within just 1 week of walking in the other's moccasins, both executives quickly figured out the core issues driving the conflict. They implemented some simple processes, cleared up the fighting, and totally transformed the relationship between the teams.
Wow.
He says from that day until Opsware was sold, those 2 groups worked better together than any other major groups in the company.
So the insight there is pretty powerful. When the usual rational approaches fail, sometimes you need a radical perspective shift. Forcing that empathy, even in a drastic way, can unlock simple solutions to really entrenched conflicts, builds resilience.
Absolutely. And that need for adaptation brings us to another key challenge: staying great. How does a CEO maintain a world-class team over time? Horowitz points out that even executives who start off amazing can kind of deteriorate relative to the job because companies, markets, tech, they'd all change so fast. The exec who crushed it in a 100-person startup might really struggle when the company hits 400 people and $100 million in revenue. The job changes under them.
It's not just about who you hire initially then. It's about the ongoing standard and the culture.
Right.
Horowitz talks about the standard. He says, look, just because someone interviewed well and had great references doesn't guarantee they'll perform superbly in your specific company context.
Right.
And he draws a sharp line between 2 kinds of cultures. Cultures where what you do matters, and cultures where it's all about who you are. He's pretty blunt about it, basically saying, you can be the former or you can suck.
Yeah, he doesn't mince words. So what does maintaining that high standard actually mean in practice? He gives a few key points. First, you didn't know everything when you hired someone. So it's perfectly reasonable to raise your standards as you learn more about what the role truly requires.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, you must get leverage from your execs. If you, as CEO, find yourself just as busy with their function after they're hired as you were before, they're probably below standard. They should be taking things off your plate, amplifying effort.
Right. They need to make the whole greater than the sum of the parts.
Exactly. Third, and this is tough, as CEO, you have very limited bandwidth for developing your direct reports. They need to be like 99% ready to perform. You just don't have the time for extensive development at that level. And he also warns against the scale anticipation fallacy. Don't judge an exec on what their job might be in 2 years. Judge them on how they perform the job they have right now.
Which leads to a really sensitive issue: expectations and loyalty. This must be so hard. How do you tell a loyal executive, someone who's performing well today, that, hey, the company's growing, your job is changing, and I might have to reevaluate you based on that new job next year.
Yeah, that's a classic hard thing. Horowitz's approach was directness. He'd say something like, look, you are doing a great job at your current job, but the plan says we'll have twice as many employees next year. Therefore, you will have a new and very different job, and I will have to reevaluate you based on that job. And hey, if it makes you feel any better, that rule applies to everyone on the team, including me.
Wow. Direct, but fair, I guess. Sets the expectation clearly.
Right. He emphasizes that when the company doubles, the executive truly has a new job. And the number one reason executives fail, they keep doing their old job instead of adapting to the new one. And ultimately, he argues, a CEO's primary loyalty isn't to the individual executive, it's to all the employees, especially those reporting to that executive. You owe them a world-class management team. That's the top priority.
Okay, let's pivot now to maybe one of the most difficult, emotional, and personal decisions a CEO ever faces.
Yeah.
Should you sell your company? This decision involves so many factors, right? A lot of them speculative, unknown, and if you're the founder, wow, the logical part might even be easier than the emotional part.
Oh, absolutely. Horowitz breaks down tech acquisitions into roughly three types. Talent and/or technology, usually smaller deals, product deals, medium size, and then business acquisitions. That's where the acquirer values the whole operation. Product, sales, marketing, the financials. And his advice here is mostly focused on those big business acquisitions.
Okay, so what's the logical framework he suggests for deciding whether to sell? He offers a basic rule of thumb for not selling. If you're very early in a very large market and you have a good shot at being number one, then you should probably stay independent.
Right.
Because in that scenario, nobody will be able to afford what you're truly worth down the line. He uses Google as the classic example. Early on, they apparently got multiple offers over $1 billion.
Huge money back then.
Huge. But given the potential size of their market search, advertising, and their dominant product lead, selling then just wouldn't have made sense. They'd have left vastly more value on the table.
He contrasts that with the cautionary tale of Pointcast. Remember them? One of the first big internet apps. They also got and passed on billion-dollar offers.
Yeah, I remember the hype.
But their product architecture had flaws, their market kind of collapsed, and they eventually sold for, well, a tiny fraction of those early offers. So passing isn't always the right call.
Okay, so the critical questions a CEO needs to wrestle with are, first, is this market truly much bigger, like an order of magnitude bigger than what we've tapped so far?
Question A.
And second, are we realistically going to be number one in that massive market?
Question B.
If the answer to either A or B is no, then you should seriously think about selling. If the answer to both is yes, then selling probably means you're selling yourself and your team short.
But these aren't simple yes-no questions, right? You also have to define what is the market, really, and who are the real competitors going to be? Like, was Google just in the search market early on? Or were they actually in the portal market against Yahoo and MSN? How you define it changes the whole calculation.
So how did Opsware navigate this, applying his own logic?
Yeah, let's look at their journey. Initially, Horowitz didn't sell Opsware. They started in server automation. He believed the market had at least 10,000 potential customers, and they had a decent shot at being number one. Plus, he thought they could expand into networks and storage faster than competitors, winning the bigger data center automation market. So their potential felt much larger than any early offers. Stay independent.
Okay, makes sense. But then things changed.
Things changed. Later, when Opsware had several hundred customers and had expanded into data center automation, they were still number one, still arguably more valuable standalone. However, it became clear that a major competitor, BMC, was going to buy either Opsware or their main rival, BladeLogic.
Ah, consolidation pressure.
Exactly. Suddenly, the being number one calculation shifted. To win, they wouldn't just need to be #1 in data center automation. They'd need to be #1 in the entire systems and network management market, because the smaller market was getting absorbed. And winning that meant beating BMC and BladeLogic combined, a much, much tougher fight.
Okay, so the competitive landscape changed dramatically.
Dramatically. And on top of that, the market itself was being transformed by virtualization. Think VMware. This meant the whole market needed retooling, a huge new R&D race, which meant pushing out profitability for a very long time.
So faced with tougher competition and a major market shift requiring massive reinvestment.
Right. Based on all those factors, it suddenly made sense to at least consider acquisition. They ran a short M&A process, and through that process, 11 companies made acquisition offers of some kind.
11. That's
It's
the
out
one.
of interest.
It told Horowitz they were likely at a local maxima, basically, the peak market price for opsware at that moment, given the current conditions. So after a lot of analysis, a lot of soul searching, he concluded that the current market price, $1.65 billion from HP, was higher than they could likely achieve independently in the next 3 to 5 years. So he sold.
It's a fascinating logical progression. But then there's the emotional side you mentioned. Horowitz calls it schizophrenic.
How do you sell this dream you built? You personally recruited everyone, sold them on this vision. How do you sell out? But then the other voice says, how do you walk away from potentially life-changing financial independence for you and your family? Isn't making money part of the goal?
It's a profound internal conflict for many founders. He offers 2 keys to try and mute the emotions, or at least manage them. First, get paid a salary. He points out that while VCs often like founders to take tiny salaries to show commitment, once the company is a real business and a potential acquisition target, paying the CEO a fair market rate is actually helpful.
How so?
It helps decouple the decision to sell from the CEO's personal financial needs. It removes that pressure of, say, living in a tiny apartment and desperately needing the payout, which could cloud judgment.
Okay. Makes sense. Removes a potential bias.
And the second key.
Second, be clear with the company. Every startup CEO gets asked constantly, are you selling the company? Dodging the question or giving vague answers like at the right price can just lead to employees feeling blindsided or betrayed later if a sale happens. Yeah, that erodes trust.
Big time. So Horowitz suggests avoiding those traps by basically explaining the logical framework we just discussed. Tell your team, look, if we achieve product market fit in a huge market and have a great shot at being number 1, we'll likely stay independent. If not, we'll likely be sold.
So you align everyone's expectations around the business logic.
Exactly. It clearly outlines the investor's interests in a way that aligns with the employee's interests too. And crucially, it's also true.
So when faced with that massive decision to sell or not to sell, there's no single easy answer. But preparing yourself, intellectually and emotionally, for that complexity seems absolutely critical.
It really is.
What a journey through Horowitz's hard thing about hard things. We've seen that entrepreneurship is just. It's a relentless path, full of unexpected challenges, radical shifts, these profound paradoxes. It really is about facing those moments when the sky turns purple head-on and finding your way through.
Absolutely. And understanding these dimensions, navigating the external pressures like crazy auditors, the tough negotiations, leading people through complex internal paradoxes like accountability versus creativity, and then making those ultimate strategic calls about a company's future. That provides invaluable insight for anyone in a leadership role, really, no matter what field you're in.
So here's our final thought for you to chew on. When the sky turns purple and the familiar rules just seem to dissolve, what deep-seated assumptions about control and certainty must you be willing to abandon to truly lead through the storm? And maybe discover the unexpected opportunities that lie beyond the horizon. Thanks for diving deep with us.